Later, the Trump administration is expected, it's reported, to revoke the Obama transgender bathroom bill, a federal guideline, basically, that told public schools to let transgender students use bathrooms matching their chosen gender identity. A White House spokesperson, Sean Spicer, told journalists that the president is a firm believer in states' rights, and the new administration had several areas of concern, both legal and procedural. So a lot of people worried about this. Joining me now from San Francisco is Kris Hayashi, the Executive Director of the Transgender Law Center. Thank you very much for joining us. I was just looking at your website, actually, because there's a lot of advice there, if you are transgender, of what your rights are. And what strikes me is we're talking about federal law here, which does vary state to state. It's quite a confusing picture, isn't it?
That's a really important question. So the first thing that I'll say is that regardless of what the Trump administration says, the law here in the U.S. is clearly on the side of transgender students. So in the U.S., transgender students are protected from discrimination under the law. However, unfortunately, there are many schools across the country where transgender students continue to face discrimination. So the Obama administration issued guidance, which basically was to support schools to make sure that they comply with the law and so that all students are able to get an education. If the Trump administration rescinds this guidance, it does not change the law. It does not change that transgender students all across this country are protected from discrimination. What, however, it does do is send a clear message to transgender youth that this current administration, this current government does not value them and will not protect them.
So the issue arose, didn't it, because there was a number of schools in a number of states where a transgender person was not allowed to use the restroom of their choice. It had to be their original gender. And there's still an awful lot of cases, I understand, being fought through the courts as well in various states.
That's right. And we're clear that if the Trump administration does rescind the guidance, that the Transgender Law Center, along with transgender students, their families, and our allies will continue to fight for the rights of transgender students. Here at the Transgender Law Center, we currently have a case of Ash Whitaker, a young transgender boy in Wisconsin who was singled out to use a different restroom from his peers. We were successful in stopping the school from implementing that policy, and that case will be heard in a month before the 7th Circuit. And also here in the U.S., we have the case of Gavin Grimm, another transgender student who was facing discrimination in his school, who was being singled out and treated differently than all the other boys. And that case will be heard before the U.S. Supreme Court at the end of March.
And no doubt these courts will be looking at the U.S. Constitution, because when you look at that and people's rights and equality and discrimination, transgender people should be protected by the Constitution. So one also wonders then what Mr. Trump is going to do, what the president is going to say. Is he just revoking the guidance by President Obama before him, or is he going to change the guidance to schools on what the law is?
It is very clear to us that this is another instance where the Trump administration is attacking the most vulnerable members of our community. And this time, it's transgender students. And is making clear that this administration will not fulfill its duty to protect all people in this country. And it is shameful and it is horrible that politicians and government officials are using their power to target transgender students who are simply trying to go to school, simply trying to get an education and to live their lives and be who they truly are.
Kris, many thanks for taking the time to speak to us. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.